Oh, hello. I'm Amanda Orlando and welcome to this video. Managing food allergy throughout your life never really gets easier per se. It just changes. It just becomes different over time. If you're an adult and you're just fully on your own, managing your allergies in work settings can have certain complications. It can make you feel very emotionally vulnerable to your colleagues and a whole other set of considerations. I started out my career working for one of my professors, so there's not really anything to share about that. I'm gonna jump into when I started in the corporate world. I was 21 years old and I went through many different jobs in that time. By the time I was 27, I left and I became self-employed. So you're gonna see my career trajectory take place in this video, but just so that you understand the context of where I'm coming from with my stories. The first company that I worked for was, I would say, very intimate. People didn't really leave. Like it was a very close-knit culture, and it was an extremely comfortable work environment they had created, and it was very intimate. And then from there I moved on to another company that was massive. It was a way bigger company, way different environment. It had a bit of that anonymity that comes when there are so many people. It was a very busy environment. There was a lot of people coming and going from roles all the time. So it was just a completely different type of place to be and type of place to work. And overall, I would say that it was a younger demographic who was working there. So the concept of food allergy was much more common when I was working with other millennials, because we are really the generation that we are the food allergy generation. I was comfortable to use the office cutlery, the office dishwasher, the shared kettle, the shared coffee maker. I used mugs from the drawer. Like I personally was comfortable to use all of those things. I always kept my lunch very clearly labeled in the fridge because I did worry about mixing my lunch up with someone else's. I was comfortable at the time eating catered food that the office ordered in. We had a lot of catered lunches, events. Authors would come in. We would have like really nice lunches with them, and it was always done with the same catering company. So once they made me one meal successfully, I was fine to trust it from there on out. I think it also would have been fine if I chose to bring my own meals to those events. I don't think anyone would have really cared. When I moved to another company a few years later, the kitchen was not as pristine as it was at my former intimate office environment, where everything was always like super cute and super well taken care of. In this new office, there were just hundreds of people, and the kitchens were super high traffic. And I kid you not, like I literally once walked into the kitchen and saw someone in the process of exploding a carton of milk. And I just turned around and I was like, okay, today's not the day. But I used to just bring my own cutlery and bring my own mug and stuff when I switched to that company, because I was like, there's just no way that several hundred people using these kitchens can keep them in good condition. Of course, always have your Epipens on you. Like if you work in a really big office place and you're going to different buildings for meetings and stuff like that, make sure you have a way to bring your Epipens with you all the time. Like it was all foodies. Everyone was obsessed with food. My director, she was like really cool. She was actually, I don't remember what the title was, but she was like somehow involved in the cheese board of Canada, I want to say. Cheese was a big part of the team culture, but I didn't mind that. Like I remember one car ride, her and I were driving to like an offsite meeting together, and the whole way there, she just like taught me about cheese. And I didn't care that I can't eat cheese. Like I genuinely was interested because she was interested. And like I said, I wasn't smell reactive. So the fact that people brought cheese in all the time, I was like, didn't really matter to me. I always cleaned my own personal work area. Like when I say that food was a huge part of my team culture at that job, I cannot tell you how much. We had office parties, oh my god, every week, every other week. Someone's birthday, some event, maybe someone just brought in pie. And so that meant that on like a bi-weekly basis, I was constantly having to deal with questions about my allergies. Not everyone in this environment knew someone who had food allergies, so it was really kind of an unknown for a lot of people, and maybe they had heard of food allergies, but if you don't know someone personally who has food allergies themselves, it's kind of an unusual thing to wrap your head around. And so I could have really handled people's comments a lot differently. If someone has really never met someone with food allergies before, or if it's something they're not familiar with, the types of comments you can tend to get from people are like, oh, I feel so bad for you, or like, oh, what is anaphylaxis like? Have you had it before? Like, how do you use your Epipens? And there can be like a barrage of comments and questions, like, I'm good. And a lot of people don't know that actually asking someone to recount their anaphylactic episodes from the past is kind of like asking them to revisit very traumatic experiences, but people don't know that if they're not familiar with it. So instead of me assuming that people understood that and having a bit of a chip on my shoulder about it, I think I could have just told them straight up, like, I'm not really comfortable discussing my medical history with my colleagues. It's kind of emotionally vulnerable topic for me, and those experiences were really traumatic for me, so I just prefer not to talk about them, but I appreciate it if you can take this seriously. I could have said something like that instead of being like, oh my God, like, why are people asking me about my personal business? Like, and getting super like weirded out and awkward, because that didn't really do anything. It didn't help me and it didn't educate them. And we also had potlucks. Obviously I would just bring something that I could eat and everyone understood that. But I remember that there was someone who, I cut it out of the video because honestly, no one needs that comment in their life. The comment really just hung there and it made me super uncomfortable. And I think I can just brush it off if people are like asking me a lot of questions about my allergies and stuff. If it makes me uncomfortable, like, I can understand where they're coming from a place of like, they just don't really get, they don't really get it. And so they're asking, and like, I understand that. But this person made a really bad comment to me, and it just put me in such an awkward position. I was the youngest person on the team. I was the newest addition to the team. And I was like, if I gave her what my real response in real life outside of work would have been, I was like, I think I would probably get in trouble. But it can be difficult to know how much and when to speak up for yourself when you are in a really junior position. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what the best way to handle that would have been. Now, as someone who's older and has been in that environment for a longer time, I think I probably could have said something and no one would have disputed it, but in that moment I didn't really know what to do. What if you have anaphylaxis on a work day and it prevents you from going to work? But while I was at that job, I actually didn't have an anaphylactic reaction. It didn't happen at work. It happened a morning before work, but because I didn't show up that day and I was pretty drugged up at the hospital and really unable to text my team to let them know that I wasn't showing up for work. So I had my mom call in and explain to my director what happened and why I didn't show up for work that day so that she wouldn't think I was a huge flake. And when I did get back to the office the following day, everyone was pretty concerned, like, wanting to know that I was okay. Now, getting my work done for the few days after that was challenging because I was taking a lot of medications to prevent the reaction from coming back. So that was interesting. Oh, and a few years later, when I was working in another job, I had to take a bunch of Benadryl one morning because I had a reaction that, like, it wasn't anaphylactic, but it was like a weird gray zone reaction. Anyways, and we know what happens when you take a few Benadryl. Like, for me at least, it like makes me loopy, shall we say. Anyways, I showed up for work and my VP was like, you can go home because you don't really look like yourself right now. And anyways, yeah, that's great. By the time I got to sort of the end of my duration at this job, I had started to experience some of the symptoms of my immune deficiencies and the non-food allergy specific immune issues that I dealt with for pretty much all of my 20s. Part of that was chronic fatigue, which, although it's called fatigue, it's actually not a feeling of tiredness. It's more a feeling of like your body is shutting down and you're just trying so hard to not pass out on your desk. I literally could not hold my head up, and holding my head up and my eyes open made me feel like I was gonna vomit. I didn't actually understand what was happening to my body at the time. I just thought maybe I'm weaker than everyone else. Maybe everyone else is more robust than me. After I left that job, I moved to another company, and I felt like the way in which I managed my allergies at this job was totally different. And I felt a lot more confident to speak up about my needs and my feelings and to communicate well with my team. So food was also a pretty big part of this office culture, but in a different way. When I first joined the team, it was more like people just love candy. So you can't know everyone's name when there are that many people. Like, it's just too much. So there's a bit more of that, blessing that comes with a bit of anonymity. There were a lot of like vegans, vegetarians, like gluten-free people. Like, it was just a totally different type of environment, and it was much less intimate. There was actually a woman my age on my team who had a peanut allergy, so the concept of an EpiPen was not totally foreign to everyone on this team. One of my colleagues at the time, he made a zucchini bread and actually used all ingredients that were safe for me, and I was like literally able to eat a slice of zucchini bread with the rest of my team, which was mind-blowing for me. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, but wait, what did you use butter? And he was like, no, I didn't use butter. I used parchment paper on the pan. And I was like, really? When we had larger team parties, like with our full department, then it was over 30 people. So if I didn't eat stuff from a buffet table or like from a catered breakfast or catered lunch, no one noticed or cared. Like, I would just bring my own meal. Again, it just wasn't anything. Someone moved into the desk next to me, and they weren't from my team, so they didn't actually know about my allergies. And to be nice and friendly, he got me a cookie and left it on my desk. Previously, I probably would have been like, oh, thanks, that's so nice, and then just thrown it out when he wasn't looking. But I thought, no, I'm not gonna do that now. I'm gonna start out, with a fresh foot. Is that even anyways, I like put my head over the cubicle and I was like, hi, like, thanks so much for this cookie, that's really nice. I actually have food allergies, so I can't eat it, but you're the proud owner of a new cookie. Thank you, like, the thought is very nice. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, well, here's an apple instead. So it was just a nice gesture. I think I also had got better at navigating those situations and making them less awkward. Another example would be like one time my director took a few of us out. We were visiting a store or something, and on the way back there was this ice cream stand, and she was like, oh, why don't I get everyone ice cream? And then she got everyone ice cream. Obviously I didn't have any, and then she was kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, like, I didn't realize you couldn't have it. I was just like, it's not a big deal. I don't eat ice cream. That's okay with me. Like, I hope you guys enjoy it. And then I just switched the conversation to something else. I moved into a different role in the company, and one of the things that really attracted me to this role was that there was a lot of travel required. And I just thought that was so cool. Like, growing up, my dad traveled so much for work, and I always really liked that. Like, I thought it was a neat thing, and I felt like the job was much more like free to like do things. At the time, I remember him saying like, so you're probably gonna have to go to like this book fair and this book fair and this book fair, and like, does that sound good to you? Is that sounding something that you're interested in? And I was like, yes, sign me up. I really want to do that. I also knew that traveling with food allergies can be really challenging, but I didn't really want to worry about that at the time because I knew that I would just figure it out as I went along. So this was something I had always wanted to do, and I just wasn't going to pass up that opportunity because like I have a disease. Actually, the woman that I worked most closely with, who like trained me and everything, she was vegetarian. So she like understood the idea of dietary restrictions really well. And then also like this team was just super inclusive. Like I don't know a better word to describe them. So anyways, I embarked on this job that has a lot of travel. It also required a lot of like lunch meetings with salespeople. So I knew that I would have some things to prepare for. I knew that there would be some challenges for me, and I was perfectly happy to tackle those because, like I said, I did not want to let a good opportunity pass me by. Now, before I get into how I manage those situations, I think I was kind of irresponsible in the sense that, yeah, I told people about my food allergies, but I was getting a lot deeper into the immune issues that I was having at the time, and I was really trying to pretend that everything was fine, and it wasn't. And I didn't communicate that to my team. And so I didn't tell them, like, if I get sick, I usually get sick for a kind of like a long time, because I have a very fickle immune system. I didn't tell them that I had problems with fatigue and that it's not the same as tiredness, and that there are days when you might tell me something and I might be looking at you, but I have absolutely no idea what you're saying because I can't even see straight. My brain is extremely foggy, and it's just extremely difficult for me to concentrate. I need to lay in a dark room. Like, I didn't communicate those things to my team, and I really should have, because there were ways that it could have been worked around. And instead, I just tried to pretend like everything was normal, and I tried to pretend like I was as tough as everyone else. But I was kind of embarrassed, and I felt like people would think that I was flaky, but I don't think they would have in hindsight. I think they would have respected that I have an immune disease and I have immune deficiencies. So I do think about that often. There's nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed about if you have to ask for like special accommodation. Don't make the mistakes that I did, basically, is what I'm saying. I did feel like a valued employee, so I don't know why I was so concerned about hiding this part of myself. I think I was also kind of coming to terms with the fact that I was going through this, and it was just difficult. There was just a lot happening. So let's get to the travel part. Going to business lunches when you have food allergies. I won't deny, there's sometimes a little bit of awkwardness in these situations, especially the first time, and if you're with people who you've never met before, or you only know, like, who you've only met briefly. I found that, because I was the client, like, salespeople want to take you to a place where you want to go because you're the client. So it just kind of works out really well, that there were restaurants that I knew I could eat at, and so I would always say, like, hey, can we go here? And even though maybe those restaurants were a little bit out of the way, people were always pretty willing to accommodate me, because no one wants to take you out for lunch and then have you become ill and end up in the hospital. Like, that's not people's goal. My colleague, who I did most everything with, she also had dietary restrictions, so it was kind of like a package deal that when people took us out, had to take us somewhere that could accommodate both of us. So that made me feel like I wasn't really alone in it. Generally, people took me to the restaurant that I knew I was most comfortable at, and because of that, it allowed me to let my guard down when I was at these meetings, because you want to talk about business, you want to talk about things like worrying about my food allergy. It would just be like this extra wheel turning in my head, and it would kind of take away from my ability to focus on work. So going to a place that I was comfortable with made that so much better. Now let's talk about travel. I think that traveling for work with so many food allergies was a big personal challenge for me, and it's something that I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of doing. And I felt like the type of role I was in, like, my superiors allowed me the independence to just do what I needed to do when I was on these trips, and to book my own accommodations and all of that. When I arrived at places, I was usually traveling for book fairs, which means that I was in a conference center for most of the time. When you're at a conference, like, usually you just have like so many meetings because you're trying, you've traveled all this way and you're just trying to get as many meetings in with the people that you travel to see. So conference centers, like, you're not going out for lunches and like having restaurant meals and stuff. So in that way, it was actually super easy to navigate the conference itself with my allergies, because I would pack a bottle of water, I'd pack just a ton of snacks from home. The first trip I ever went on, and my colleague made fun of me, rightly so, because it was kind of hilarious, but I packed like half a carry-on bag full of sun butter sandwiches because I knew I could eat them, and I was only going for 5 days. So I was like, I'm pretty sure these will be fine for 5 days in my luggage. The idea of like going out for dinners every night of a conference with a new group of people every time and at a different restaurant every time, oh, that was just a lot for me. And it was just, yeah, that part was hard for me, I'm not gonna lie. That was my biggest obstacle to overcome, especially when you're in places with language barriers. The first night in Germany, I actually did okay. We went out for dinner with people that I was very familiar with, so I felt comfortable with the people I was with. There were only 4 of us, and we went to an Italian restaurant, so the food was familiar, and I brought German translation cards thinking that that would be naturally the language of translation card you would need in Germany. But what I didn't realize was that actually there were a ton of Italian immigrants in Frankfurt, so my German translation cards were kind of useless. I needed Italian translation cards, and my Italian is terrible. Sometimes I'd be like, no, I'm not coming, I don't want to be there. And then at the last minute I would change my mind and come and just like not really eat anything. I don't know, to be honest, it was really difficult for me. It was a big personal challenge. And then when I got back to the hotel, I just like stuffed my face on snacks in my room alone. So I got to go to London for 10 nights. Like, that was an amazing trip. And then there were times when, as I got more comfortable with salespeople and seeing them time after time, I would ask them where they were going to take us on these trips. And there was one time when I reached out to the restaurant ahead of time in Germany, and they assured me that they could make me a meal that was safe for my allergies. And then when we got there, they assured me again. And then they brought the food. Now keep in mind, this was a table of I think 10 people or 8 people. And it was myself, my colleague, and then the salesperson, and then the rest of the people were like from around the US, and I had never met them before. And so it's a little bit of like, it's like a new situation. And then they brought the food to the table and told me it was dairy-free, but it was ravioli with cheese in it. So that night I ended up eating an iceberg salad, but I was very prepared and I had food in my room. Another time when I was in London, publisher actually took us to a Michelin-starred restaurant called Vanilla Black, and I got to eat a 3-course meal, and I ate all of it, and I licked my plate, and it was amazing. So sometimes it works out super, super well. The main things that I hope you take away from this video are that communication is super, super important. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Do whatever you need to do to be your best possible version of yourself, and don't assume that people are not going to understand when you haven't even given them the opportunity to understand. Find really great friends in the workplace. Find great colleagues who you can rely on and who understand you. Don't ever let your allergies be something that prevents you from following your dreams. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, questions, critiques, please leave a comment below. I would love to have a discussion on this. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos. Bye!